Hey, welcome back. This is Dr. Chad Kish, and we are in Chapter 3, Assessing the Cognitive and Affective Domains of Student Learning in our PEP 320 Assessment in Physical Education and Wellness class. Today, we're going to be on our second lecture, our video analysis of Module 4, to kind of do a little bit of review of some of our cognitive and affective assessments and to learn some new ones and to provide something to tie the chapter together basically. Remember, here are our Module 4 objectives. At the end of this module, you should be able to develop a class and professional portfolio. A professional portfolio is something you would use to obtain a professional position. A lot of times you'll use those in the interview process. You should probably bring some documents to you in a professional interview and have them available. You may or may not use them. It may even just be a resource for you to prepare for an interview when you have your professional portfolio developed. We'll discuss various strategies used to assess the cognitive domain of learning. We will complete a journaling activity labeled Journaling for Understanding to show you a way we can use this assessment to check for full understanding from our students or participants. We will develop some traditional test questions. These would be selected response questions, maybe some open-ended questions, essay questions, constructive response type questions. We will discuss various strategies used to assess the affective domain of learning. And remember, the affective domain is more about feelings and values and a little deeper rooted. It requires some reflection and introspection. We will describe and discuss various assessments used in the athletic training and injury evaluation process through our athletic training lab. And we will apply career-related knowledge and skills in an open response activity. We will also complete our assessment of learning for the Unit 1 material, which is our Unit 1 exam. So our big ideas for today, our video lecture, are we're going to dig into some different types of assessments, really focusing in on the cognitive domain. And if we remember from our last lecture, the cognitive domain is that about the thinking. Do we understand knowledge, terms? Can we process things? Can we put things in order? Do we understand processes or ways things are done? We'll talk about two different types of assessments for the cognitive domain. We'll start with selected response questions. These are kind of your traditional test questions. We will work through constructed response activities. These will be things more like essays or developing some kind of a product where you put things together. We will then work on reflection statements, why they are important in the whole process. That goes back more to the affective domain. We will talk about another assessment technique called interviewing, and this is not interviewing somebody going out in the field to do research, although that is a good way to learn. This is more of a teacher, coach doing a quick check for learning to interview to get answers and how you can use that through the three different domains. And then we're going to tie the entire chapter together. All right, so let's review real quick. Last time we talked about portfolios. Portfolio is a project that usually lasts over a period of time. You're going to put artifacts in it. It can be related to an activity. It could be related to a class. It could be a team. Sometimes at the college level, coaches have the teams put together their playbooks when they give them out or keep some kind of portfolio. And it could be a professional portfolio. Like I said before, it could be used to help you prepare for an interview or possibly even be an artifact in the interview process. You will do a class-related portfolio for this class. Journals, right? A journal is a good way to write things down over time. That's another way to, it's a good place to ask questions on how people feel about things, why they do stuff, to even test for some cognitive understanding. It's important to remember journals are more open-ended type of questions. We're going to provide some prompts and allow some students some divergent thinking, allow them to think on their own. They might go in different areas or different ways. Open response questions. We briefly touched on that. We will do an activity at the end of the module based on open response questions. These are really ways you can give a specific scenario to a person or group of people, and there are a variety of different answers, kind of depending on which way people read into the scenario. So they're a great way to to discuss, provide an opportunity for a deeper level of knowledge, a higher level of DOK, allow people to go through different levels of Bloom's taxonomy. And then usually you have different people do similar or different open response questions. You come back and discuss what your group or you individually would do, and you get an opportunity to reflect and learn from each other. So these are very effective to use not only in the classroom, they're used in graduate programs quite a bit, but there are great ways to do some training or enhancement or professional development in the career field. Role plays are another way to play through different scenarios. You might give a team or a class or even people in a job site an opportunity to role play a scenario. This could be as simple as, we're going through our CPR certification. I need you to practice the emergency procedures coming on a scene to make sure they're safe, and you allow somebody to do that, demonstrate that ability. I need you to go through rescue breaths. I need you to go through our cardiovascular routine to check the circulation and do some chest compressions. Can you role play that and do that correctly? That usually happens after a learning activity, so your role playing is your assessment strategy. So that's a review from last time. Today we'll shift over to the right side. We're going to look at more of the cognitive type of assessments. We'll start with traditional test questions. We'll talk about selected response questions. We'll then move to completion and essay questions, which would be more of the constructed response questions. And we'll talk about the interviewing process as well. So these are the 4 types of cognitive assessments we'll really go through. Interviews are a technique that can bring all the domains together as well. So let's talk about some selected response questions. Your traditional test questions take on some different different ways we go about it. We might start with a multiple choice or a true or false or fill in the blank, but we'll go through all those. But in physical education, the traditional way to assess the cognitive and possibly even the affective domain is through written tests or activities. Remember, cognitive is we're testing knowledge and understanding, and affective means we're trying to understand the student's feelings and emotions and the whys of they do things. So the traditional way to assess is through some kind of written test, maybe even a verbal question and answer test. These types of test questions are useful in assessing the understanding of some basic information. Usually these type of questions don't get to a higher level depth of understanding. Those come through projects, portfolios, performances, different assessments. If you think back to chapter 2, most of those go into a deeper level of knowledge, a higher level of DOK than some of these basic traditional test questions. Why is it used? Well, it's useful to assess things such as rules, terms, definitions, the orders things go, but it's also a very time-efficient way to assess this basic knowledge. We can give a quiz. It can take 5 minutes. We can take it up, move on to our activity. We can come back and look at the quiz later to see if anybody knows the rules or not. And then we can redesign our learning experiences from there. Another reason they're used is they can provide an artifact for us that documents students' learning on this basic information. Do students know the rules? How do you know? Well, I have the assessment data on their quiz over the rules. Do they understand the concepts? Well, we did a basic test on some different concepts, tactics, or strategies, so I can use the data from that. Do they understand safety considerations? This is critical. We might want to do this on a regular basis and always have a safety question in any of our tests and quizzes. They might even use a traditional test question to consider the order of events. We remember most activities we break down into different skill segments: the stance, the preparatory phase, the action phase, the follow-through. Can we have them match what, if we give them the definition or a summary of what one looks like, can they match that to the specific phase of the skill to show us that they understand the order? So we can actually do a little psychomotor assessment through some of these traditional test questions in a way. So our selected response questions, here's a couple of the different ways. Remember, they require limited time to complete. They can be sometimes assessed automatically, or they usually don't have a lot of time in the assessment phase. It gives us a quick snapshot or picture of what students know. First of all, multiple choice questions. They're versatile. They can actually assess all levels of Bloom's taxonomy if written well. We want to try to remember, you don't want to make the multiple choice questions tricky. We want to try to avoid confusing wording. If we're having them tell us which part is not one of the categories, which sometimes you need to write the multiple choice question that way to be able to assess that, make sure you underline and bold the not, but try to really word your questions to avoid misconceptions or confusing wording. A true-false question is pretty good for basic understanding or testing lower levels of knowledge. Remember, every student has a 50% chance of getting this right. So it's not really always a valid determinant. Sometimes students can read the question and just kind of blindly guess whether they know or not, and they have a 50-50 chance of getting it right. They really don't diagnose understanding or misunderstanding. They may just help us scratch the surface on basic understanding. Number 3, the matching question is another type of selected response question. This usually leads to, they're effective for testing terms, possibly dates, vocabulary, maybe some definitions, maybe who did what, all right? So the one thing with these type of questions, sometimes they lead to just short-term memorization. We're really just looking into more of a recognition than a response or a deep level of understanding. Remember, the best way to have some validity and reliability in these type of tests is have several questions on the same topic that are written a different way, and then make sure that students have a chance to answer them. And if they get them both right, they probably know. If they only get one of the two right, there might be some still misunderstanding there that we need to do some reteaching. All right. Remember, if we have something, when you're writing a question, if you have a question that asks about a date, make all the answers a date. There should be, if it's multiple choice, make all of them a date and make all of them semi-logical for them to pick from. Sometimes you'll have one that's kind of way off, and if the people guess that one, they really had no idea. But generally, you need to make it where they understand, and it's not just kind of a process of elimination that's the only answer it might be. So the next is more of a completion or production type questions, right? This starts our kind of constructed response. It's kind of in the middle between selected and constructed response. If you have no answer banks, it's more of a constructed response because students are constructing things with no assistance. So these require students to provide a specific response. First of all, listing questions. They can be used to test for order, for components, for positions, for important parts of an activity maybe. A listing question could even be put these positions on a field diagram. That could be considered a listing question. So an example, list the 5 positions on a basketball team, right? You provide them a court diagram and they list where the positions start off. Example B, list the 4 important parts of the baseball softball swing. So they would have to list preparatory phase, action phase, follow through. Oh no, the first one was stance. I need to go back and put stance first. Then you might even say list and describe each of these 4 important parts. Next, fill in the blank questions, number 2. When we consider our fill in the blank questions, they're good for testing a recall of knowledge or terms. This is a good spot to really test for vocabulary or maybe just some understanding on a specific person or date. If you have a fill in the blank and you have an answer bank, though, you're giving students more of a chance to just guess or eliminate the wrong answer. This doesn't prove that they actually know it right off the bat. So make sure in the fill in the blank you want to be specific with 1 or 2 word terms that they put in there. Don't just have them finish this sentence and just give them a word or two and have them write, a lot of the sentence. Number 3 in our completion or production questions is essay questions. This is where we really get into producing an answer, a constructed response, and we'll go into a little more detail on short answer or essay questions on the next slide. But this allows us as a teacher to provide an opportunity for students to use analytics and analysis or analyze something. You might ask them to compare two things or possibly contrast. Compare is telling how they're similar, contrast is telling how they're different. You might even bring in a little bit of the affective domain in an essay question, asking them to explain feelings or values or the whys that they did something. These are good types of questions, essays and short answers, to allow students to demonstrate a deeper level of understanding. All right. So let's dig a little deeper into these constructed response questions or essays. We can use them to evaluate a deeper level of cognitive knowledge on some kind of topic. All right, we're just not saying list the president that wrote the Emancipation Proclamation, which would be Abraham Lincoln, or he signed off on it, which Lincoln University is named after. Or an essay question would be more along the lines of, could you explain the process that was used to free the slaves by Abraham Lincoln? And that would be more of an essay, or at least a short answer. So these tasks are usually more open-ended, so students can provide the basic important points of the answer, but they have a variety of ways to actually answer the question to show their understanding. Another way for some constructed response questions are, give students some kind of realistic task. We've talked about some of these previously. Could they develop a flyer or even a brochure on some type of activity? That would be a constructed response showing that they're able to have a deeper level of knowledge. Can you have them develop a program or plan, maybe design a play using this? That would be more of a realistic constructed response task. Those are a couple of examples. These allow students to create a product or an artifact of learning. You can use a scoring checklist here. You'll actually have something in hand. It's not just a visual observation of them doing something. There is something they create that you can use to document the learning. And then they can take this artifact and place it in their portfolio as well to document possibly growth and learning over time. An essay or constructed response may allow for some creativity. They allow students to be a little bit creative or explain the way they think things happen. And then you can also use them a little bit to evaluate communication or writing ability. When you're in college, you're going to ask for college level writing or college level discussion. At the different levels, you can provide exactly what you're looking for in your communication or writing. You might say it's okay to use bullet points, or you might say use college level writing to provide 3 paragraphs. So let's do a journal activity. And in this journal activity, if we were in the classroom, we would do this activity. I would have you write it on a clean sheet of paper, and then we would discuss this. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll get through everything but the discussion part, okay? So get a clean sheet of paper out. This is going to go in your journal activity section. And I want you to write journal activity written test at the top. When you get done with this, I want you to put it in your portfolio. All right, this is going to be the background of a future assignment. So let's go ahead and discuss this. In your journal activity written test, we're going to have 3 parts. We're going to label them A, B, C, and D. So for A, I'm going to leave this to you so you can develop it for a career field you're interested in. So I need you to choose some kind of sport or maybe an activity or a task that you would either teach or train someone to do something. This could be as a PE teacher. It could be as an athletic trainer or a physical therapist, a coach, possibly a manager at a business or a personal trainer. All right. So for A, I'm going to choose baseball coach. Write down something you would choose. All right, so remember, if you're going to be an athletic trainer, it would be good to consider something in the athletic training realm. This could be the effective taping of an ankle. So here, we want to think more along the lines of a baseball coach, but if we're talking about athletic trainer, we might talk about like I said, the process of taping an ankle, right? So that could be our unit. So start thinking and narrowing it down from to unit. As a baseball coach, I might do different things here, or I might just say, okay, we're going to talk about base running. So B, right? Hopefully you chose something related to a career field you want to do a little more digging into. B, you're going to develop a multiple choice question related to your activity. So think of history, rule, equipment, skill, strategy, process, something along those lines of what you would do. So I'll take a second and make sure you write this down. Write a multiple choice question. Here is my example. If I'm a baseball coach, I might ask this question to my team. It might not be something we're writing down, even though it's considered a written test. We might do these verbally in a coaching situation. We might have just went over base running, and I could ask here, if you're the runner on third and an infield fly situation happens, and it's called by the umpire, what do you do? I might leave it that open, but really I'm probably going to provide them with a little more detail. So if you're the runner on third and an infield fly occurs and called by the umpire with 2 outs, with less than 2 outs. So for B, kind of change this up a little bit. You're going to develop a multiple choice question related to your activity. So here's the question. You're the runner on second base. There are 2 outs, and the batter hits a fly ball to deep center field. What should you do? A, wait to see if the center fielder catches it. B, tag up and go to third after the catch is made. C, put your head down and try to score. D, run to third immediately on contact and watch and listen for instructions from the third base coach. The answer is D. So you would provide a multiple choice question related to history, rule, equipment, skills, strategy, or a process. Provide 4 possible answers and then write the answer. So make sure you do that for B. You're going to develop a single multiple choice question, provide all the choices as well as the answer. Go down to C for this journal activity. You might want to pause this video and write out the questions as we go A, B, C, and D. You're going to develop a true-false question related to your activity. Same thing, history, rule, equipment, skills, strategy, process, something along the line, right? As well as you're going to provide an answer, right? So here's an example for C. Back to my baseball coach. We're working on base running. There is a runner on first and third. There are no outs. A pop-up is hit to the shortstop. This is an example of the infield fly. True or false? The answer is false. This is kind of a detailed question, and it even asks for a little bit higher level of understanding than your typical true-false question because it's giving you a scenario. The infield fly rule is there has to be a runner on first and second or first, second, and third with 0 or 1 outs. All right? So in this situation, it gives you no outs, but it says there's a runner on first and third. There's not somebody on first, second, and third. So this is not an example of an infield fly. It would be false. All right? Question D. Make sure you finish question C, develop your true-false question based on your A, your scenario, and then let me know if it's true or false. Write that down. So Once you finish that, go to D. This is a little bit longer, thoughtful process. Develop a constructed response question, short answer, essay, related to your activity, and then provide some important points for the answer, such as bullet points. All right? You might say you're the runner on third with one out. An infield fly situation occurs and is called by the umpire. The first baseman drops the ball and it rolls towards right field. Explain what you would do. All right, this would be more of a simple one for a coaching situation. You would hope students could explain, they would determine, they would list what's going to happen. All right, I'm on third, there's one out. I'm going to check, I'm going to look and see how far the ball got away from the first baseman. I'm going to see if the catcher is paying attention. I'm going to tag up first. Then I'm going to come down the baseline if my base coach, pick up my base coach. I'm going to attempt to score if the ball gets far enough away from the first baseman. Then I have to determine about a third of the way down the line if I'm going to continue to score or go back to third. As I get 2/3 of the way down the line, I'm going to have to glance to see if the ball's coming for a play at the plate to determine if I need to slide. And then I'm going to take the strategy or tactic of sliding towards the inside or outside part of home plate. So you might ask them to explain a process with that. And that can be done in either college level writing, such as paragraphs and essays, or this example would be more of bullet points. So develop me a constructed response question related to your activity, and then provide 3 to 5 bullet points for your answer. And those are the things you would be looking for. All right, so that is your journal activity. Make sure you complete that. Put it in your portfolio, because I'm going to look for that when I assess the portfolio, and we may discuss it next class period. So why did we do this? We did this really to give you the background, and I wanted to go through examples for the assignment on written test. So this was our journal activity. You don't post it on Canvas, you put it in your portfolio. But there is an assignment on written test, and it requires you to do the same A, B, and D, but you might do multiple ones. So on your assignment written test, we will post this on Canvas. Write down A, and then choose if you want to be a PE teacher, athletic trainer, physical therapist, coach, manager, something along the wellness career. Give me your career field. And describe your unit, sport, activity, or the topic for your training session that you are going to assess through some kind of written test. So that could be a couple of sentences, 1 to 2 sentences. B, I need you to develop 3 different ones. So under B, you're going to give me a 1, a 2, and a 3, and they all need to be distinctly different. So develop 3 multiple choice questions related to your activity, unit, or sport, or topic for training. Make these multiple choice questions have an A, B, C, and D possible answer, and then provide the answer under each question. So A, you'll have a couple sentences. B, you'll have a 1, 2, and 3. Each of them will have an A, B, C, and D, and then you'll have an answer. Number C, we're going to work on our true-false questions. So develop 2 true-false questions. I want one of them to be true, one of them to be false. Have these directly related to your A. I want you to number them 1 and 2, write the full question out, and then tell me either true or false. Like I said, I would like one of each. Then D, this takes a little more thought. Develop your 1 constructed response question related to your activity. This could be designing an essay. It could be asking for a short answer, asking for a list of what you would do or how you would make a decision. All right? It's an open response type of activity. All right? This could even be something that would go in a portfolio later. So I need you to provide important points for the answer. I need 3 to 5 bullet points that you're going to look for in the answer for your constructed response question. 3 is the minimum. You should really look at more like 5, 6, or 7. So post this assignment in the format I'm asking you to do, specifically, with answers to every question to Canvas by the deadline. All right, so let's step back off of the assignment and do a couple of things here to kind of wrap up some learning. Reflection statements are really important in doing a lot of activities. You might do a portfolio or a log or a journal or have somebody do a different activity that we've covered or a different type of assessment that we've covered either in chapter 2 or 3. Why do we want to do reflection statements? It provides the opportunity for students or participants to critically reflect or look back at something and learn from it. All right. This might be where we can bring in the affective domain because we can ask people what they learned or how they feel or why they did something a certain way. This provides us an opportunity to really learn from experiences. All right. It's important for us to learn by doing or learn from things we do. But if we don't reflect on it, we really don't learn deeply or understand the process. It's just like in a lecture. If I tell you something, you might hear it. But if I tell you something and you write it down, you got a better chance of understanding it. If I tell you something, you write it down and then you discuss it, you have an even better chance of learning it or understanding it. So when we allow somebody to learn from an experience, learn by doing, then we make them do a reflection statement. It really helps us understand and process information and have a better chance to really learn from doing. What are some things reflection statements should consider? An acknowledgement of performance or actions. Were you able to do this? Did you lose weight? When we did our PA, our physical activity log, and our calorie log, can you analyze and explain if you lost weight and maybe ask them the whys. Why did or why didn't you lose weight? It provides an opportunity for students or participants to share reactions. I believe that this happened because of, I felt this way, right? I lacked motivation because of this. And then it gives them an extra opportunity to really dig into the affective domain. It allows people to consider things such as feelings, observations, ideas, and really dig into the whys of what happened. And that is really increasing the depth of knowledge on our activities. All right. Reflection statements are critical in the overall learning process. Try to remember to do those as you go. This might just be a discussion. Think of it. If you're an athletic trainer, you have an assistant trainer, there's an injury, you have a debriefing, you're writing your SOAP notes and you're discussing what we should do next. That would be a reflective type of interview or, basically just discussion. So reflections aren't always writing reflective statements. It's reflecting on things and the why you happened. That could even be analyzing a video of a game performance. You're reflecting on why something happened a certain way. All right. Next is interviews. We're talking about the interviewing technique that's used more of as an assessment technique than a research technique. This usually takes the form of what I call a Q&A or question and answer. Do this sometimes within a lecture or an activity. I'll do this in a practice section as a coach. I might even do it to close out the day to see what people understood to design learning for the next day. It's really an interview of students, a quick brief question asking for an answer to evaluate current knowledge. You may ask them a true-false question, a why question, a fill-in-the-blank question. You're basically just kind of giving a short answer question, or you might ask them 4 parts of something. What tactic would you do in this situation? It really, when you're doing this in a class or a team, you should ask a variety of students these questions. Don't have them raise a hand at, Jimmy, can you do this? Joe, can you do this? Joni, can you do this? Terrence, explain this to me. Try to sample student knowledge rather than assess every student. You're just looking at one specific student. This is where we can bring in some of these techniques of fist to 5. Show me your understanding level. Show me a fist if it's 0, a 5 if you really understand it. You might ask somebody with the 5, and then you might come back and ask somebody with the 1, and then you can gauge where people are. This is really a great technique to use in formative assessment, and it's a great strategy to kind of see where your students are at, to plan what you want to do next, whether it's within an activity or to plan for the next activity. You can use this really as a deeper level and kind of start combining different things. These can be questions, they can build in complexity, or you could even match that with demonstrations, right? So if you ask a question, this is where we're checking the cognitive domain of learning. We're checking understanding, the thinking. You can ask somebody for a demonstration, all right? The demonstration would allow them to provide the psychomotor response that we learned back in chapter 2. Or you could ask them how they felt when they did something, or why they did something a certain way, or why they were upset about something. And that would test the affective domain, or at least scratch the surface of asking about the affective domain for us to get some understanding. This is another way that you could do some kind of combination. I could have one student demonstrate the correct way to perform a serve in tennis. I could ask another student to explain the parts as they went, and then I could ask another student to explain a critical error they made, and then I could ask the student that did the demonstration how it felt. Did they have a kinesthetic feel with it? Did they understand how their body actions were relating? Why did or didn't it occur correctly? And then how did it feel to be critiqued by the whole class? All right, so you can combine things in this question and answer, such as demonstrations, questions. You can assess all three domains. And this is, like I said, it's brief. It's done usually as a formative assessment technique, and it's kind of more of on-the-spot learning. The biggest benefit for this is students who English is a second language, students with learning disabilities, and even those with writing deficiencies that don't write real well but can explain things verbally, students that are more verbal than they are written. Sometimes visual learners or kinesthetic learners are really better with this. Those students have the best benefits from this type of assessment because they can answer these things even though they might not be able to write out a formulated response, because understanding sometimes is a little bit harder for these students. So let's wrap up the chapter learning. Now we're going to have several different activities after we do this for this chapter and module, but this wraps up the textbook learning or the textbook information, as well as the stuff I've integrated into the textbook for the lectures. So I'm going to provide you here a conclusion. When you develop assessments, you need to consider two important questions. What do I want my students to know and be able to do? Or what am I going to use as evidence showing they reached that learning goal? All right, so we develop, number one, what do you want your students to know and be able to do? And then how are you going to assess it? Remember, we talked this as backward mapping. All right, you figure out kind of what you're doing. Where do you want to go at the end? You design kind of what's going to prove you got there, and then you go back and design your learning experience based on the baseline of your students. Remember, when we're talking about assessments, what can we use as evidence? Is there a score sheet? Is there a rubric? Is there a score? Is there a video? Is there an artifact of learning? If we use various assessment types, we really get a more complete picture of learning. It's not just a guess. Remember when we went back earlier in today's lecture and I said you might ask two questions in the multiple choice that are over the same kind of idea but asked differently, because if students get them both right, they really probably know. Well, that's the same thing. When we use various assessments, students have different opportunities to show their level of understanding, right? And then all of our performance-based assessments that we've learned in Chapter 2 and 3, Module 3 and 4, they can help us measure a variety of domains determined by the design or the way we use these. And it's important for us to try to assess each of the three domains within some kind of activity, because it's important if people understand it, then if they can physically do it in our field, and then why they did it, how they did it a certain way, that really helps us enhance the learning experience for our participants. All right, so here's your to-do list. I had you do a journal activity. Print that thing out if you didn't do it yet. Write it out, put it in your portfolio, and then complete the assignment based on that journal activity. Two different things. The journal activity you don't turn in on Canvas, but the assignment, which is basically an extension of the journal activity of written test, complete that and turn it in on Canvas for me. All right, make sure you hit the deadline there. The deadline's attached to the assignment, and it's in the announcement for the unit. We are done with Chapter 3 now, so you need to complete the Chapter 3 reading quiz. If you didn't read the chapter, you're probably not going to get all these questions right. The lecture and video lecture are enhancing the chapter learning, so I don't go in everything that you should have got through the reading, but it's really more of a reading quiz than a review of the lecture quiz. So make sure, if you haven't yet, read Chapter 3, and that is the Module 4 chapter reading quiz. Make sure you hit the deadline on that too. And then if you haven't yet, start preparing for the Unit 1 exam. The Unit 1 exam is embedded here in Module 4, right? Read chapters 1 through 3. That was the assigned readings. If you haven't, go back through, read those, finish them up. Maybe scan the stuff you highlighted, if you highlighted when you're reading. Go back and read your Unit 1 lecture notes. That would be your notes from all the lectures. Maybe breeze through the stuff in your portfolio. That helps you prepare for the test. Because during the test, I give you all selected response questions. You have 2 minutes a question, and you won't have time to go back and look them all up. There are a variety of safeguards. It's an individual assessment. You take it on your own. It is open book and open notes, so you have a chance to look up some of them you don't know. It is not phone a friend or work with a buddy. Right? Do not do that. It's an individual assessment of your learning. So there's a couple of safeguards. I have to have a time limit there. I don't provide you with the answers, so you can share them with your buddy when you get done with the test. We'll discuss those when we come back next time and meet in class. We'll discuss the questions people struggled with. Once you answer a question, you can't backtrack. And then everything's randomized. All the questions are randomized, and then the A, B, C, and D are randomized, so everybody's questions and the order that their answers are in are a little bit different. You'll all get the same questions, but you're not going to get them in the same order. So remember, here are our Module 4 assignments. All right? You had assignments such as an exit ticket and a journaling activity. Your newest current ones are your Chapter 3 reading quiz, your assignment written test. We will work next time on our lab assignment, an athletic training lab review. We're going to, our plan is to have the athletic trainer come in and visit us and provide us with a lab to understand assessments for athletic trainers and injury evaluation. Our Unit 1 exam is embedded in this module. It's one of the assignments. And then we'll come back after the exam and do a summative assignment. We're going to do an activity, get together in class, really work on this in small groups, and then you'll develop something off of that. And we're going to work on an open response scenario. We'll go through that as a group, we'll learn different ones, and then you'll actually develop one as your summative assignment or activity for Module 4. All right? Hey, hopefully you learned something today. Make sure you were taking notes. You complete your assignments that are on the to-do list. We'll see you next time in class. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to email. Try to be as specific as you can, and I'll get you an answer. Have a great day, and remember, your job right now is to come in on all your classes, learn something you can use in your career field, and then take that information out and change the world. Have a great day.